a short guide on something that a lot of people have been asking me questions about. Just simply how to maximize your DPS as the job it is that you play. So, first thing I'm going to start with is maximizing your. Now, what auto attacks is, first of all, they're automatic. Just target the mob, and you do any ability on them. You'll see this little circle here above the enemy here. Every time this spins, I'll be attacking. As you can see, spin, attack, spin, attack. So, that just means I don't have to do anything at that point in order to actually attack. Yeah, so that's an auto attack. Now the thing with attacks is you can only do them when you are 45 degrees relative to the enemy. As you can see, I'm not hitting them at this angle because I am not 45 degrees relative to the enemy. I turn them on and then I turn slightly. See, this is the absolute minimum range that I can do, or minimum angle that I can do auto attacks on facing the boss. Obviously, if I face this way, it doesn't work, but if I go on the same angle on the opposite side, it still works. The thing with maximizing these as a melee is, what you want to do is you don't want to miss any of them. So if I hit this dummy here, let's say that this dummy here is the boss, pop downs, guessing it like I normally would. Okay, and now that striking dummy over there, that one that I focus targeted, is that striking dummy. Let's say it's going to be an ad spawning. What I could do, and this is what you'll see a lot of people doing, is they'll look at this, walk over, and then they'll hit the dummy. Now obviously that's suboptimal because you could be just there in a second, right? And what you could do would be look for the 321. There's my auto attack damage. And instead of walking over, it'll be like, okay, hitting the ad, dive, and then dash back over right after the auto attack actually goes through. What to go for is you want to this, and you want it to happen after your next GCD. So go like that, and then go like this, and then you'll see auto attack comes after the GCD. But if I go too slow, that's where I hit the GCD and the attack goes off first. Basically what that means is waiting on the cooldown timer of the auto attack, so I'm losing damage later on because it attacks back like this. For melee only, of course, but it's it's most noticeable melee due to the fact that there's travel time and movement in general that you'd have to cover, and if it gets a lot easier to cover if you pay attention to your auto attacks, and you lose a lot less damage if you know when your auto attacks are coming. I didn't even lose one there because I left it right after it went off. It takes that much practice, but it's a good that auto attacks are very important. Maximizing them first, trying to increase your DPS by any significant amount. Now, here's another thing that is it works like this, but Grease Lightning refreshes. Grease Lightning refreshes. You have two skills. One of them is Snap Punch, and the other one is Demolish. Now, the thing that makes Demolish different from Snap Punch is if I Snap Punch, it gets refreshed immediately, as you can see. But if I use Demolish, it does a kick animation, and then it refreshes. So it means that I get a delayed Grease Lightning refresh on, on the Demolish. So if I get that refresh on the Demolish, I have to travel long distances. I can actually keep my stacks when I normally wouldn't. Refresh here, and they gotta wait a couple seconds. Say it's Titan X or something, where there's downtime, and then I can hit the boss as soon as he comes down. Go 1, 2, Demolish, and it'll refresh at very low numbers. Actually, this is kind of significant because I have an opener that I use that I consider it the optimal opener for do it anything less than the skill speed that I have, which is 385. But basically what it is it fast millisecond grief lightning refresh, and because of using a snap punch versus, you know, you'll like advance will end in a second, and this is generally only going to be doable with a demolish. This, I have 2 seconds left as I hit the demolish, and I barely get the refresh. In this case, I actually lost it because I'm recording, so I have a little bit more latency than normal. But that refresh is really doable because of having demolish. And like you can't really do a snap punch there, or you have your demolish ball. Yeah, I mean, now that we've covered auto attack, that's, you know, the biggest, most important thing. Next important thing is maximizing your filler and your uptime on the. Now, you'll maximize that. Every class has a DPS filler. For example, on the summoner that I've 80 potency attack with 53 mana cost. Not that efficient, but you know, let's say you put up your dots, you have your pet hitting the boss. There's nothing else to do because there's nothing. So instead, you'll ruin on the time, and that's known as your DPS filler. You want to basically be spamming that at all times. So like every class except for Monk has a DPS filler. Monk is different specifically because they don't have a filler, because they have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rotation where you just kind of alternate between side and back rotations. That they don't really have a like DPS filler. The closest fracturing when there's 5 seconds on a demolish, but you know, that doesn't really count. Yeah, so a summoner Black Mage's filler, which is gonna be like, oh, Black Mage doesn't have a filler. Well, actually, Black Mage's filler is Umbral Ice phase of their rotation, because there's nothing else to do in the downtime between fires except for reapply your dot, maybe do a blizzard, and then go back into fire. And that's your filler. It's, you know, it's nothing. And then this is your main DPS rotation, which is just fires, of course. Yeah, that's the DPS filler. And then Ninja, actually Aeolian Edges, dots, and filler, buff rotation, dots. You know, you're just gonna basically go back and forth doing that while throwing in your ninjutsus and whatnot. And Dragoon. Dragoon, they're full thrust. In a Dragoon opener, you're gonna go like heavy thrust, put up buffs, and then regular opener, off GCDs, chaos thrust, and then now the opener comes right after I hit this phlebotomize. Filler is just 1, 2, 3 base combo on a Dragoon. And then, because I have to refresh my heavy thrust, I do that, and then I go back to filler, because there's nothing else to do. So, essentially, your DPS filler is what you're doing in, like, anytime there's nothing more important to do. Keeping up a dot, or refreshing your buff. That, in between, is because, like, what else are you going to do? You're just stand there and not do any damage, but you're trying to maximize your DPS, so in order to do, you have to be attacking constantly. And doing that is, you know, is going to achieve that goal. Just maximizing your damage. Now that we're through fillers, also very important that a lot of people don't do or know about is stacking cooldowns. Now, are interesting. Like, oh, well, blood for blood. 10% more damage, but I take 25% more damage. So I should probably just be careful using it. Maybe just not use it, because what if I take damage and I die? Wrong way to look at it. The thing about blood for blood is, yes, it's your fault if you die if you have blood for blood up and like something hits you and kills you. I mean, that's gonna happen, you know, like, yeah, it's gonna happen if you're not really paying attention. So obviously the goal is to just pay more attention so that never happens. But the thing about cooldowns is stack them for the biggest effect. Like, you have internal release, which is the chance to crit for 50% more damage, because critical hits 50% more damage. and you have Blood for Blood, which is 10% more damage all of the time, and then you have Potions. Potions are, you know, that increase depends on the amount of main stat that you have. A lot less than, say, if you were I-90 or something. Regardless of this, stack them for the best effect. Blood for Blood is only 10%, but a weight and is like, say you have an ability, Blood for Blood, 10% increased damage. Then you have another ability, and let's say it's 10% attack speed or something like that. Okay, so you could go Blood for Blood, and then that would end, and then you'd go 10% attack speed ability back to back. But during this period of time, you'll have 110% increased damage. You know, for both of them. 10% more attack speed means you're just attacking 10% faster, so that's, you know, it's roughly 10% more damage. Probably exactly 10% more damage, depending on how you want to. But if you stack the two of them, 10% more damage while attacking 10% faster, so you actually get 121% increased damage during this duration, not 120. 10% plus 10% that, it's 10% times 10% of the... so let's say I'm doing 100 DPS, and then I do 10% more DPS, it's going to be 110, and then I attack 10% faster, that's not going to be... times 10% more attacks. So it's going to be 110 plus, you know, extra 10. 10% of 110 DPS is 11. So you add that extra, like they stack like that, basically. They take the value and then they multiply more onto that. That's why you'll get 120 if you pop those two that. Yes, that is like a really long cooldown that you get a couple of them to fight. Potion. Now, potions are really good. They increase your main stat by about 100, and that's optimally. You have to stack them with other cooldowns, and this is something that a lot of people haven't been doing recently. Actually, we've had like a long discussion between crafters that stacking is always going to be worth it. Generally, no, if Blood for Blood and Internal Release come up in the same instance that you have a potion, though, wait on both Internal Release until, you know, the potion is ready, or on the potion until Internal and Blood for Blood, or just one of them if one of them's already sit on it, and you stack them all again. And massive burst of damage that you don't normally get because you're not stacking the cooldowns. If you damage, sure, but you won't get, like, you know, like, let's say it's 151% DPS or whatever, like, it's just ridiculous that you won't get if you by themselves. You want to learn to stack your cooldowns as much as possible. That's why bards get to burst like 1000 DPS and then sit at like 500. It's just because everything just multiplies on top of each other and just like ridiculous amounts of damage. Now, moving on, that only a couple classes in this game have are Proc. Black Mage has their Fire. I know this isn't really a rotation, but it's just to show the Fire Starter proc. So, you get a Fire Starter proc, and this makes your next Fire 3 instant, and, you know, that's that. They also have Thunderclap procs. Now, the thing about procs on a Black Mage is they have two different kinds. One is proc by a dot, and one of them is proc by an actual spell. One that's proc by a dot, you can only proc. You know, the one's proc by a dot can proc no matter what. No matter what is going on, if that dot is able to tick, it can proc, and it could potentially proc twice in a row. That cloud will have higher priority, something like Firestarter, where you can't get Firestarters if you're not casting fires. So, this just means if you get a Thundercloud, you can like literally just go Fire, Thundercloud, and then if you get a proc on the Firestarter, hey look, you didn't waste a proc. That bards, you just use your proc at all times because it's damage, because it's blood. now that I've got procs cleared up, like backer cooldowns, maximize auto attacks, just every single class, because all of them get. Black mages aren't really cool, aren't great, but you know, 47 damage, free damage. Can't really argue with that, right? And you know, just one last thing that now, Eichel is, you know, a good black mage. I'm gonna give him that. But the thing about the overkilling that people aren't really understanding is just inflating his numbers. That's what it's doing. What it's doing is allows him to finish off the ad in a way that gives him damage. Like, he's gonna flare on 2 targets anyways. It so happens that it's at 3%. It doesn't matter. He's going to be doing that flare regardless. But the difference is, like, what you want to be doing as a melee DPS is not reactively, you know, positioning yourself. Predictively position. So, for example, turn 10 ads, which you take as helper here. What you want to do in this situation, you want to have the least amount of time off of the ads as possible. So if you sit there and you hit that ad for that extra 3%, but that 3% is going to be completely covered by the black mage flaring, why don't you just move to the next ad so you don't have any downtime while you... That's why flaring in that situation isn't exactly cheese, even if it's help overkill it. But then, like, what if it dies unexpectedly and you just hit a GCD and now you have to react, so it's going to be like, have to react and then latency. Like, you have an extra long delay that you wouldn't normally have if you had just been waiting. And, you know, like, it's just something very simple that increases your damage a lot. It's just when things are going to happen, where they're going to happen, and there before you have to be there, or as earliest as possible. Like, you know, turn 11 after the phase change, you're just gonna run over to the ad. You know where the ad's gonna spawn, just be there. Why would you be on the opposite side of the room when you know it's gonna be there every time? Boss, like, goes immune, and ad's gonna be in X, and you walk to X, and that's it. You don't want to be at Y and then dash to X. That's a... is that... as caster, especially... battlefield and how you face you're given and out of the mechanics. Like, you don't need to get in for a tether, or you don't need to be on the opposite side of the room for a tether when you know that tether. You want to be closer to minimize the movement. You know, it's just you only have to take 2 steps, and you need to take 5 steps. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just take 2 steps? 2 steps takes like half a second. 5 steps takes like 2 seconds, so, you know, like 2 seconds worth of not casting versus half a second, like... to be where you need to be. Essentially what I'm trying to say with positioning. I know this guide is really... popular, then I can go into a little bit more depth on, you know, like... DPS classes, but you know, I've had a lot of people asking me, and yeah, I just want to try to test it out and see how popular it is. So